Let's continue the conversation with an old friend. Chris Shays, Republican from Connecticut. He represented the state for 21 years. He supported John Kasich for the 2016 presidential nomination. Chris joins me from Washington. Thanks so much. Great seeing you again.
Oh, Larry, I love being on your program. Thank you.
All right. What are your thoughts on Trump's economic plan delivered at the Detroit Economic Forum?
Well, I think it's something I would have probably been thrilled about if I was Paul Ryan. It's similar to what Paul suggested. I mean, the bottom line is since 2000, we haven't seen the economy grow faster than a 1.5. It used to grow at about 4% a year, which meant every 18 years, our wealth as a nation doubled, and it meant generations of young people became wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. It's not happening now. It didn't happen under George Bush, and it hasn't happened under President Obama.
You said you considered Donald Trump totally unfit to be president.
Oh, yeah.
How did your grand old party nominate him then?
Well, first let me say, he's everything my mother and father taught me not to be, everything we teach our daughter not to be. My theory is this. When Ronald Reagan became president, he talked about the need to return government back to the people. It was like Alexis de Tocqueville talked about, in Democracy in America, where he said the strength of America is in your local governments. It's what taught Americans how to govern themselves locally. And we've seen our government become more and more centralized. So what unfortunately happened, though, is that under President Reagan, returning it to Washington, he started to talk about the central government as being the enemy. And then what morphed into the Republican psychic was that it was better if government didn't work, because if it worked, bad things were happening. And so government stopped working, and now people are frustrated that it doesn't work. And we want basically someone who thinks of himself almost as a dictator to rescue us. It's pretty sad.
Now, you have party leaders who Trump has annihilated, destroyed verbally, and they continue to support him. Why?
You know why? If you are a Republican up for office and he's your standard bearer, it's kind of difficult to go to your constituents, some of whom dislike him and some of whom love him. I have a family member who loves him. I have a former staff member who loves him. And it's hard for me to have conversations with him because he's brutal. I used to think of him as a seventh grade bully, but I don't know if giving him into seventh grade is being fair to seventh graders.
You said you think Republicans will regret supporting Trump the same way you're sorry for supporting Sarah Palin. And some have suggested that Sarah Palin led to the downing of the Republican Party.
Well, it was a continuation, and I can see how I got trapped into it. I mean, I read about her. This governor was taking on the establishment. I love that. I loved her convention speech. I thought it was really fun and, kind of in your face. And then I kind of got caught up. I was supporting her. And every day she did something that made me more and more uncomfortable. By the time the election happened, it was a disaster. And then afterwards, we were stuck with her. I mean, she was responsible for the defeat in a primary of Mike Castle, who would have become the senator in Delaware. She was responsible for getting a very poor candidate to run against Reid in Nevada. And the end result is Obamacare passed because they had the 60 votes because of Sarah Palin. Oh, what a disaster.
What are your thoughts on Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin? The former CIA chief, Michael Morell, who has endorsed Hillary, says Trump is unwittingly being played by the Russian president.
Well, you know what? I have a feeling that Putin likes him. What can I say? I mean, there are things, I guess I'm kind of conflicted because I think in some cases the United States, after we won the Cold War, just stuck our thumb on top of Russia. We encroached too far into Moscow's area of influence. And so in some cases, I think we were a little arrogant. But obviously, Putin is, he's still part of the KGB. He thinks that way, acts that way. And for Trump not to know what he did in the area and so on is pretty astonishing.
All right, Chris, what does Chris Shays do? Does he support Clinton? Does he not vote? Does he support the Libertarian? What does Chris Shays do?
Well, I definitely don't vote for Trump. I'll look at the Libertarian. I'll look at writing in a name, and I'll even consider whether I would support, believe it or not, Hillary Clinton. The one thing that appealed to me more than almost anything else was her reaching out to Republicans. Our founding fathers developed a constitution that was designed to bring a very diverse group of people in to find common ground, and it was through the art of compromise. And so I am considering whether I would support Hillary Clinton.
When she was in the Senate, Chris, and I interviewed many Republican senators during that time, they said she was great to work with. She compromised. She was a hell of a senator.
I loved working with her. That's true. So, there's a part of her that I just wish she could look at the camera and say, I really screwed up. And not try to justify the unjustifiable. That part is still there. I used what I told my staff. We used what we call the community meeting test. If I couldn't explain it in a community meeting with a straight face, I better not do it.
What's Connecticut going to do in November?
Oh, I think they will go strongly for Hillary Clinton, in spite of the fact that they have an immense dislike of our Governor Malloy.
Will the fact that Bill Clinton is back in the White House improve your opinion of things?
Well, I will tell you this. He worked with Republicans, and his people were nice to work with. So that part, but Bill's, I wouldn't want to be married to him.
Is there a way you could envision what would happen to your country if Trump were president?
I think he's reckless, understanding the power a president has to engage in nuclear combat. The thought that he would think that you could or should use them. I think he's reckless with his understanding of our commitments to our allies. And every morning I would wake up thinking, oh my God, what is he doing? The thing that's so astonishing about this man is, if you don't like him or you criticize him, he thinks you are a bad person and lashes out at you. And if you like him, he thinks you're a good person. So the governor of New Mexico is not a good governor because she hasn't embraced him. Well, she's a great governor. And then some people who have endorsed him may not be so good. So I'm thinking, are world leaders going to have to wonder if they say something critical, if he's just going to lash back and do something stupid? That's what I wonder.
One of the important things facing the next president will be Iraq and the whole Middle East. You traveled to Iraq 19 times when in Congress. You were back there earlier this year. What's your assessment of the situation?
We have to make sure that ISA doesn't have a caliphate. And we have to be incredibly aggressive about going after them. But we have to use soft power better than we've used it. We have to understand the culture better than we do now. I mean, when we went into Iraq, I voted to go in, but I was astonished at how foolish we were once we were in. And frankly, had I known how foolish we would be, I wouldn't have voted to go in. We didn't seem to understand what Shia and Sunnis were like and how they interact with each other. We made so many mistakes that it's hard for us to get our credibility. Let me make this one point. With our allies, we have to say what we're going to do and keep our word.
Did Biden have the right idea, splitting it up into 3 entities?
No, a terrible idea. In fact, I'll illustrate. The first 4 times I went into Iraq, I went in outside the umbrella of the military. And I made contacts with folks. And when the Senate voted to divide them into 3 parts, they said, see, You did just what we said you do. You came to conquer and then divide us. What Iraqis say to me, don't you know about the Fertile Crescent, the beginning of Western civilization from here, and yet you want to divide us?
What to you, Chris, will be the biggest challenge facing a Clinton presidency?
Getting our government to work again. It hasn't worked in a long time. Getting people to understand that compromise is the strength of our country. It's what our founding fathers expected we would do. We're not always going to get our way. And I think that's going to be the most difficult.
Will the Middle East ever be solved?
The Middle East will be a better place if we understand the culture of the people there.
The Israel situation will be resolved. Will Israel ever live in peace with its neighbors? Ever?
I don't know if in my lifetime. And obviously that's a huge problem. I mean, you could go back and say it all kind of began there, but that wouldn't be fair to the Israelis.
Why nationally is Congress rated at only 13%? Congress is much lower than Trump, much lower than Hillary, way lower than Obama. Why?
I'll illustrate it this way. I'm in the Senate, and I ask unanimous consent that we bring up Bill 295. Is there objection? One senator objects. It's taken off the calendar. I asked a Republican congressman who got elected to the Senate, how do you like being in the Senate? And he said, I love it. I can kill anything. The Senate rule that allows one senator to stop the agenda of the 99 unless there's a vote to get 60 votes is really destructive. It's what prevented us with the contract with America to get some things through the Senate when Republicans were in charge. Whichever party is in charge, the minority can take off the agenda items that we need to address. And the Senate rule needs to be changed. I mean, we should be voting on the president's choice for being on the Supreme Court. We shouldn't just say we're not going to have a vote. Vote it up or down.
Chris, you miss the Congress?
I really miss it. And you know what? People say, well, how could you miss it given what it's like? But I loved my colleagues. I loved every day you learn something new. I love the interaction with my constituents. And it's a great opportunity if people are willing to find common ground. And, you know, I always felt that was part of my mission. How could I find common ground with those on the other side of the aisle and with my conservative colleagues on my side of the aisle? Did you work well with Mike Pence? You know what? Mike Pence was a gentleman. I remember, the answer is yes. I remember one time I said something in a conference and there were some harsh words about what I said. And Mike came up to me and said, you know, I really appreciate what you said. It needed to be said, even if I may not have come to your defense. He's a gentleman. Unfortunately, I think he's drunk the Kool-Aid. It's the Trump Kool-Aid.
Have you ever worked with or been around Tim Kaine?
I haven't been, but I really like what I've read about him. Some people said he's boring. That's kind of unfair. No, what he is he's real. He's and he's a, you know what? That to me made me think I could consider voting for Hillary Clinton, which, you know, I'm looking at right now, because it's a wise choice. He's not a partisan. He wants to work with both sides of the aisle. He's a gracious man, very popular, and he's a smart guy. And what is my friend Chris Shays doing now? What I'm doing is I'm trying to make money because I ultimately want to be a philanthropist. I want to be able to give away money.
Good luck to you, Chris. We love you.
Take care.